welcome back to my channel. My name's Katie. In this video I'm going to be talking about my favourite base products, my favourite cheek products from 2019. So I'm going to do two favourites videos. So I'm going to do all base products like foundation, concealer, powder, primers, then cheek products, bronzer, blush, highlight. I'm going to talk about all those products in this video, and then I'm going to do second favourites video where I talk about all eye products like brows, mascaras, eyeshadow, and then lip products as well. So I'm going to mention my favourite products from each category that I've tried this year, and I'm also going to talk about some ones that didn't work out so well for me, some rejects. So I'm going to start with primer. So I tried about 10-11 primers this year. Quite a few of them were from cohorted beauty boxes, which I did cancel my cohorted. I think I cancelled it in like September time. 5 in total that I bought. And I'm not really massively into primers. If I'm going to go for a primer, I feel like I want something quite glowy and like highlighty on the skin almost. Just because I use like a lot of powder and I do mattify my face, so I feel like it's just nice to have something a bit glowy to start with. So my two favourites that I've tried, they're both drugstore, they're both very affordable. So I've got the Barry M Glowmance Soft Focus Revitalizing Cream, which looks like this. It's sort of like a butterscotch kind of caramelly colour. Once you kind of blend it in on your face, it just kind of adapts to your skin tone, and it just leaves you with a really nice like healthy glow, but it doesn't look like you've smothered oil on your face or smothered like glitter on your face or anything. It's just like a perfect bit of dew without being too much. You like a nice subtle glow under your foundation, then I think this just suits that perfectly. This one's also quite similar. It's from Technic. It's the Strobe Effects Cream Catching Rays. It's just got a beautiful like highlighty glow to it. This one does have like a tiny bit of glitter in it, so if you don't like glitter in your primers you might not like this, but it's only really like a small amount. And again, it just does a similar sort of thing. It gives your face this nice bit of dew, like glowiness and highlightiness, but it's just not too much. It doesn't look like oil is all over your face, and then your foundation just goes on top of it really nicely. And they do have a few different colour options for this as well. I did do a mid-year makeup favourites this year, so a lot of the products I'm going to mention are like repeated from that video. So for example, I did mention these two in that video. In terms of the second half of the year though, I didn't really find any other primers that I really liked. I mean, I found a lot of products like generally that I thought were okay, but they just weren't anything special. These are just two that I feel like, you know, sort of stood out to me as quite good. And when it comes to primer, the only thing I'll mention as a reject is this. So this is from Figs and Rouge, and I have tried a lot of primers from them now, and some of them I like. The glowy ones I do think are quite nice. I was going to mention the Morning Revival Glow Drops because I do quite like them as well, but my foundation doesn't always go seamlessly on over the top of that, so I just was a bit like reluctant to mention it, but I do quite like that one. This one, however, I don't really like, just because I just find that my foundation is sort of like balls up over the top of it. It's just, foundation just doesn't go on nicely over the top of it. They just don't go well together. So me, I think it's just really important that a primer works well with foundation, like you're going to put over the top of it, and I just don't feel like it did. I just feel like I got little balls on my face when I was putting the foundation on, so don't really like this, but I do like some of the Figs and Rouge primers, but this one I didn't get along with. So I've just counted, and I in total bought and tried 21 foundations in 2019, which is too much. I'm going to try and not buy so many next year because I don't need all of those foundations. And realistically, when I look at it, the majority of those foundations to me were like good but quite average. Like there's a lot of these foundations I've tried that I just feel like I could live without, and just even though they weren't terrible, they were absolutely fine. They were just sort of average foundations. They just didn't really impress me, and I think that's going to show in the fact that I've only actually really got one like favourite foundation this year. There's only one that's really impressed me an awful lot, and then I've got two sort of honourable mentions. These are ones that I do like quite a lot. They have more good going for them than bad, definitely. The L'Oreal Infallible 24-Hour Fresh Wear Foundation, which I've mentioned a lot on my channel throughout the year. I think it was April that I tried this for the first time, so more earlier in the year. So I've had a lot of time to use it. It's in the shade 15 Porcelain, which I do actually need a lighter shade, but I don't think there is a lighter shade at the moment. It's like not perfect shade match. I do find that I need to put white mixer in with it, but I mean, I don't mind that. So it's like a solid sort of medium, buildable to high medium coverage, which is perfect for me. That's what I like. It doesn't look heavy, it doesn't look cakey or foundation-y. It just looks really nice on the skin. It's got more of a like kind of semi-matte satin sort of finish. I wouldn't say it's super dewy, which I'm not really into super dewy foundations. I feel like they draw too much attention to my texture. But it's not like super matte either, so it's not dry or anything, so it's just kind of the perfect balance for me. And my favourite thing about this is that it just stays on my face all day, and I find that quite hard, quite difficult to find. So the fact that this actually just lasts really well just makes me like it. It's a foundation I want to go for if I'm going out to like a meal, or if I'm going on a night out, just anything where I want my skin to look nice and I want it to last a long time. This is definitely the thing that I go for. It's just really nice, looks great in the skin, it's got decent coverage. Again, it's not full coverage, so if that's what you're into, but for me it's just like, whatever it doesn't cover, I'm just going to use like full coverage concealer with it anyway, so I don't have an issue with that. I love this. This is probably like my favourite foundation in my collection at the moment. I can't find much wrong with it really. Really like it, would definitely repurchase it. Would be nice if they had some more shades. I think the shade range is like decent. They have got quite a bit there, but I just feel like they could have even more. What's also funny is I remember trying the original L'Oreal Infallible foundation like about 2-3 years ago, and I don't think I liked it. Like, I just didn't like the finish of it. But this one, I don't know what they've done to the formula, but whatever it was a great move because I really like this. And in terms of honourable mentions, I'd go with these two. They're not perfect, but I do like quite a lot of the things about them. So the Kiko Full Coverage 2-in-1 Foundation and Concealer, which I actually tried right at the beginning of the year. In January, I do actually have a review for this. It's in part 3 of my reviewing and decluttering on my foundation series. One the kind of downside I think to this is that it could last a little bit better. It has got good wear. It doesn't look really bad at the end of the day, but I feel like, for example, that L'Oreal one wears a lot better. Like, the L'Oreal one doesn't look very different to how it looked when I first put it on, whereas I can notice some differences with this. The coverage is amazing. It's like a high, medium, low full coverage, which is really nice, and it looks very smooth, it looks very buttery on the skin. If you put too much on, it can look a little bit cakey, so just kind of be careful of that. And again, I do have a colour issue with this, and it's a doe foot, so it means I just kind of have to doe fit it around my face and then just dab some white foundation and sort of, yeah, it's a little bit inconvenient. I think if you're into kind of like full coverage foundations, then I think you'd like this quite a lot. And this is one that I've actually just tried recently in December. It's the Tarte Face Tape foundation, and I have got this one on my skin today. I've used it about 4 or 5 times now, and I am really liking it actually. I think it wears really well. Not quite as well as this, but pretty damn close. It's really not far off it at all. It's got really decent wear. It's got a nice finish. Again, I do actually think it's quite similar to this. It's like this sort of semi-matte satin finish. Doesn't look too dewy, so it doesn't draw all of the attention to my texture and my pores, but then it's not completely matte either, so it doesn't look dry or anything. It looks really nice on the skin. Again, it doesn't look heavy or cakey, just looks really smooth and really nice, and there's not really much wrong with this either. But I will talk about it a little bit more when I do my November, December updated makeup review, which will be up probably late January. Okay, so in terms of rejects when it comes to foundations, as I've said, there's not really a lot of bad foundations that I've tried. There's only 2. One of them that I don't even have on me anymore because I got rid of it. Was the Technic Matte Mineral Foundation. I'm not like 100% sure, but I'm like 99% sure that it was this foundation that gave me like a really bad like skin rash. Like, my skin just went absolutely mental. I'm gonna put some pictures on the screen because I've still got some on my phone of what happened to my skin. I'm pretty sure it was this foundation because it happened like after I'd used that foundation. I used it like twice in total. Once on my first impressions, and then I used it like a week or so later, and that happened to my face, which wasn't great. And even if it didn't do that, I didn't really like how it looked. It just settled into all of my lines, all of my texture. It just didn't look flowering on the skin. The coverage was actually alright. Like, I remember the coverage being pretty decent, but the finish looked horrible, and it was also really orangey, and it had this sort of like moussey consistency, which made it difficult to mix with like white mixer, because obviously I needed to because it was too dark. Also this one, so this is the MUA Pro Base Foundation, which I've seen a lot of like reviews of this lately, like it's sort of resurfaced, and a lot of people do like this, so just because I don't like it doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't like it. So I have got a review for this up on my channel, and then I also did a second review of it in part 1 of my foundation series. I go into a lot of detail in the part 1 of that foundation series, and I kind of list all of my issues with it, as well as like demoing it and doing a wear test. But to summarise from that, I just found that it looked really dry on my skin, just too dry, and like even though I do prefer a matte or a semi-matte finish, it was just too dry. It settled into everything I didn't want it to settle into. Particularly in like my eye area, like my eyelid and my under eye, it just did not look nice at all. Whilst you can get good coverage from it if you build it, I do find that if you want to kind of make it look a bit more lightweight to kind of combat the dryness and the not so nice finish, then you don't get as good coverage if you put less on, so it's just kind of like, what am I supposed to do with it? And in my original foundation review, the wear was not bad. However, when I reviewed it in my foundation series, it didn't look great. At the end of the day, it didn't hold up great. So I have had different like experiences every time I've used it, but overall I just feel like it just doesn't do enough good stuff for my skin. However, I have seen a lot of people recently that I subscribe to use this and say that it's really good, so I don't know, maybe it's just my particular skin that it doesn't get along with. My skin is quite normal. I feel like oily skin perhaps would be the best type that would get along with this. So, see, now that I think about it, the YouTubers that I've seen use it do actually have oilier skin, I think. So yeah, I feel like if you've got oily skin, this might work for you. But for me, I just found it a bit too dry on me, and I didn't like the finish of it. Okay, so just counting, I've tried 23 concealers, so that's even more than the foundation. However, I definitely did find more good concealers this year. I've got quite a few that I'm going to mention. It's mostly high-end concealers. I just buy a lot of high-end concealers. I don't know why. It's just that one product that when I see like high-end brands bring out concealers, I just want them for some reason. I've got 5 concealers that I'll mention. One of them's drugstore, 4 of them are high-end, so sorry about that. Hopefully next year I will find more drugstore ones that I really like. I'll talk about the drugstore one first. I generally think this is really good. I think this rivals the other 4 high-end ones. In fact, I wouldn't say that it's any worse than any of them, and if I'm honest, this is probably the one that I've used the most this year since I bought it. So it's the e.l.f. 16 Hour Camo Concealer, and I know that this does get mixed reviews from people. Some people say it's too drying. I personally don't find it drying. It does have more of a matte sort of finish. What impresses me about this so much is the coverage. Like, it's full coverage. In fact, it might be the most full coverage one here, to be honest. Which at first I thought was the Tarte Shape Tape, but then when I was using it today on my eyelids, I do feel like I notice veins a little bit more than what I do when I use this one. So in my opinion, this is like the most full coverage out of all of these. I don't find it dry, and I don't find it like settles into my lines or just looks really crepey and horrible. Like, all of these concealers do settle into my under eye lines because I have under eye lines. My eyes are quite deep set, so I just have a lot of lines under there. It's impossible for them not to settle in. It's just how badly do they do it. So this is in the shade Fair Warm, which obviously this is a bit lighter than my skin tone, so I use it in my eye area to brighten, but I would be interested in getting like a slightly darker one to just like conceal blemishes on my nose. This is my kind of go-to under eye eyelid concealer, and it's so cheap. It's like £4 or £5 or something. It's just ridiculous. If you don't want to buy a high-end concealer, you definitely need to try this one because it's affordable, it's full coverage, and in my opinion it's equally as good as the high-end ones that I've tried and liked this year. This must be almost running out now. I've used it so much. It was like about May I think I brought it. It's still going really strong though. I can see like when I look through the hole though that it's like a lot left, like it's all kind of at the sides. This technically is not new to me this year. I did buy it about 2 years ago for the first time, and I really liked it, hence why I wanted to repurchase it again this year. Obviously I already mentioned the Tarte Face Tape foundation, so it was just part of my Tarte order that I did in December. The coverage is pretty damn insane, pretty full coverage, and again, I think the e.l.f. concealer is a dupe for this. In my opinion, these are so similar to each other, but if I'm being honest, I feel like the e.l.f. one has a tiny, very minuscule amount more coverage. That's just my opinion. Tell me if you disagree. But this is still definitely full coverage. Like, it's amazing. I love it. And again, I feel like it has a very similar finish So yeah, it's like the sort of thing where just don't put too much on and then it's going to look fine. It's not going to look cakey, but again, if you're going to do massive triangles under your eyes, yes, it's going to look thick and heavy. This one I feel like it's a tiny bit more lightweight, but I still think it packs a lot of coverage as well. Like, I still think this is full coverage, but this is the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Concealer, and I have seen like mixed reviews for this throughout the year, but on my skin I've got along with this really well. I think it's worked fine. I don't feel like it's looked too dry or anything, or settled really weirdly on my eyes. I personally have got along with it really well. This is the shade 105, which is very pale with a warm undertone, which works for me. It is maybe a tiny bit too yellow because it's definitely a very strong yellow, but I find when I blend it into my skin, it doesn't look like unnaturally yellow or anything. It looks like fine, it just blends into my skin tone. I really like this. It's got great coverage, and in my opinion, it's probably one of the more lightweight ones out of these. I would say that this one and the next one I'm going to mention, the Born This Way one, these are the most sort of lightweight ones, but then at the same time they've got really good coverage. So, but yes, Too Faced Born This Way Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer. I know loads of people love this. I really like it too. This one's slightly less dry than like the Tarte and the e.l.f. one. Like, it's a little bit more of a hydrating formula, but at the same time it's got really good coverage. I wouldn't quite put it on the level of coverage as Tarte and e.l.f., but it's pretty damn close. Like, it's a low full coverage, definitely. This is in the shade Swan, which is a tiny bit too dark for me, but I can use it like on the outer parts of my face to conceal around my mouth and my nose. That's what I use it for. Like, a kind of main combination that I've been going for is e.l.f. on my eye area and this around my mouth and on my nose. They have added more lighter shades to this, so I would repurchase one of the lighter shades, definitely, because I really like the formula. Last one that I'll mention, I think I tried this in February. It's the Jouer Essential High Coverage Liquid Concealer, which you can get on Beauty Bay. It's about £16, I think, so it's not quite high-end price, but then it's definitely not cheap either. It's in the shade Lace, which, again, it's a tiny bit dark for me, but I use it on the outer parts of my face and my nose, or if I am going to use it in my eye area, I'll put like a lighter concealer or a white concealer on with it. And again, I find this quite similar to the Born This Way in that it's got like quite a hydrating sort of finish to it. It's not super dry, but it packs some really good coverage. Again, I'd say it's a low full coverage concealer. I'd recommend all of these. However, I would say if you've got dry skin though, I would go for one of these three, so the Too Faced, the Jouer, or the Fenty Beauty. I mean, the Fenty Beauty one's a bit confusing though, because I don't think it looks dry on me, but then I have heard other people say it looks dry on them. But in my opinion, it's one of the more hydrating ones of these, but I don't know, I guess it's just gonna depend on your skin. If you've got more oily skin though, I would say that the e.l.f. and the Tarte one are probably gonna work better. My skin's normal though, so I kind of just get along with all of them. Hopefully I find more drugstore concealers next year that I really like. In terms of rejects, I've got three here that in my opinion are just a bit naff. So there's the Carter Beauty Covert Concealer. I just feel like this does nothing really. It just doesn't add a lot of coverage. It's got more of like a light coverage sort of foundation-y kind of formula to me, in my opinion. Like, it's really similar to the like full size dewy foundation. As a concealer, I just don't think it works very well, and it's just really oily as well, and I don't like my concealers to be super duper oily. This is just really oily, and it's just like not great coverage. Like, I expect more coverage from a concealer. Same with this one from Kiko. This is the Kiko Skin Tone Concealer. Again, the formula's not too bad, but it's just way too light coverage for what I normally want to go for. Also, like, the amount of product is like absolutely tiny. Like, why is it so small? And also, I mean, I don't know if this is consistent across all of these, but mine has a damaged applicator, so the doe foot like isn't screwed on properly. It like spins around. I don't know if you can see this, but it spins around, so it's not glued on properly. So, I mean, that's obviously not going to be the case with all of them. Well, I hope not, but I don't know, just put me off using it really. And the MUA Pro Base Full Coverage Concealer 101, didn't really like this either. First of all, it would not cling to my nose for some reason, which is very peculiar and odd and not something I find very often. It just wouldn't stick to my nose, especially when I used it with the MUA foundation. Like, they did not work well together. It was weird. Coverage was pretty like minimal, non-existent in my opinion, so I don't know, to me this was just a bit of a pointless concealer. So these three I would avoid. So again, I tried a shit ton of powders this year because I really wanted to find some powders that work for my skin this year, because I've just found it very difficult because I've had a problem with separation under the eyes. Like, they just like make my like under eye makeup look all weird and like almost separated. These three in my opinion are really good. So the first one I'm just going to mention, I've tried it recently and it is an iconic product that loads of people love. It's the Laura Mercier Translucent Loose Setting Powder. Again, I've used it about like 4 or 5, maybe 6 times since I bought it, because it was in my December's first impressions, and I really liked it. I think it has a super flawless, like kind of airbrush looking finish. I think it looks amazing on the skin. The one sort of thing that I will say about it though is that it does have a bit of a colour tint to it, so I could see this making me look a bit dark with certain foundations, which does annoy me slightly if I'm being honest. But it's only slightly dark, you know what I mean? It's not majorly off, and I found that it works with a lot of foundations fine. Like I've been using the Tarte Shape Tape, the NYX Born to Glow recently because they're in my rotation, and they work well with those. They don't make me look super orange or anything. The finish is just flawless, sits under my eyes perfectly fine. It looks airbrushed, and I think what people say about this is like pretty true, to be honest. Like, I'm starting to fall in love with it, you know. I just really wish that it actually was translucent. That's the thing. It just makes my skin have a bit of a darker tint to it. I just wish it was actually translucent. These two I don't have any colour issues with. So I've got the W7 Set It Up Special Effects Finishing Powder, which I think I tried in September. And I've fallen in love with this ever since I've tried it, and I'm looking at it and there's really not a lot of powder left in there because I've been using it so often. This just looks lightweight, it doesn't look cakey, it doesn't separate under my eyes, it's just a V powder. I like it. And it's quite affordable as well, which is great. The only sort of downside to this is flashback, but I don't really take flash photos that often, to be honest, so for me it's not a deal breaker or anything, but I know a lot of people it is important. It does have flashback, I have noticed. Like when my mum took some pictures of me when I went out for my sister's birthday, I used that powder, and then she put those pictures on Facebook, and I was like, my under eyes looked like proper white. But it was just my under eyes for some reason, even though I'd used the powder like all over my face. For some reason it was just my under eyes that looked white. So I don't know what that's about. I do feel like my highlighter does show up over it. It doesn't like get rid of it like some HD sort of powders do, but it does minimise it ever so slightly. It's the same with this one. That is my one kind of complaint with this, is that it can make my highlighter and my bronzer not show up as nicely, not show up as pigmented, but other than that I like everything else about this. This is the L'Oreal Infallible Magic Loose Powder. In my opinion these are really similar. This has got a blue tint to it, but it just goes on translucent on the face. It has such a nice finish. It looks lightweight, it doesn't look cakey, doesn't separate my under eyes like with the W7 one, and this was quite affordable as well. I think it's like $8.99 or something, so I'd definitely repurchase this. So in terms of some drugstore options, I really like these for my skin. Honourable mentions to these two. I do have some issues with them. So the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Powder in Lavender, I've used this one today and I do just feel like I have mixed experiences every time I use this. Sometimes it looks really nice and it just does everything for me, but then other times I use it and it looks patchy. And like today for example, it's gone really sort of scaly under my eyes, but otherwise it looks fine on the majority of my face. It also does have a bit of a white cast to it. I mean, to combat that I could get the butter shade, but then I don't know if that would look too dark on me. It's just like, I don't really know, probably can't win. See, like, I don't know, I do like it, but I'm not in love with it just because it can be patchy on me sometimes. So I don't know, I'll give it an honourable mention. I don't have any patchiness or anything with this one. My one sort of issue with this though is that it can make my base look a bit dark sometimes. Again, it's like, if my foundation's a bit too pale, it's okay. But then sometimes it will make me look a bit orange. But when it doesn't, I actually do really like this. Again, it does not separate under my eyes. It sets everything perfectly. It looks pretty flawless, has a pretty flawless finish. The only thing I'll say is it's a bit heavy looking. I feel like it looks a tiny bit cakey. Again, I feel like I can make it work if I apply it strategically and just don't go overboard. But I do think this has more positive than it does negatives. I'd be interested in getting the translucent shade because this is actually the shade Naturally Neutral 070 to 11. It looks like the lightest one there, but then maybe I'm thinking that the translucent one would actually might be better, but I don't know. I'd consider buying that one. A lot of the powders that I've tried this year, just looking at the list, my main issues with them were either the colour was off, like a lot of the translucent ones like would oxidize my makeup. For example, the Kiko Invisible Touch one, that I found like it was translucent, it was light white, but for some reason it turned my face orange. This one from Revolution Pro I was really excited to try, but if I'm honest, this just made my face look super cakey and super heavy, and under the eyes it just did not look good at all. It just looks so heavy. Also, it's a shade F1, which I'm pretty sure is still the lighter shade, and it literally made my face pink. Like, it doesn't even look that pink when you look at it there, but it made my face literally like a marshmallow. It looked pink. So yeah, I would consider this a reject, definitely. And I was really excited for it because, I mean, it does have coverage. I will admit that it's a foundation with coverage, which in my head sounds great, but just looked way too cakey and it made me pink. Also, this pressed powder from Nabla, and I was excited to use it. I looked at it, I thought, hey, that looks quite pale. And it turned my face bright orange, which is a problem. I just don't want my face to be bright orange. So we're going to move on to bronzer now, and in my opinion, this was the year for bronzer. I found so many amazing, great bronzers, which I feel like in the past I've had problems finding bronzers that have suited my skin tone and just not looked really orange or just not looked really harsh. But this year I found some amazing bronzers for pale skin. In fact, I think I've got about 7 that I'm going to mention as favourites, and even then there's still some ones that I'm not going to mention that were actually really good and I really liked. For example, the number 7 Match Made bronzer I thought worked really well. I thought the Revolution Reloaded bronzer was really nice. The e.l.f. bronzer. Those would be my honourable mentions, but the ones I'm going to show you now are my ultimate favourites. So I've got like 7 here. And I've got some things from like every sort of price range. I've got some drugstore, I've got some more expensive. So I'll do the drugstore ones first. 2 of these are like more expensive for the drugstore, but these 2 are the more really cheap, affordable ones. So I've got the MUA Bronzed Matte Bronzing Powder. I think this is like about £3. It's ridiculously cheap, so you definitely need to try it. And they have got like a decent shade range. I don't know how deep it goes. It might not be super deep, but there's definitely a few shades to choose from. And they've also got ones with a more glowy finish. This is a matte one. This is 100 Solar. It's just got that beautiful sort of caramelly, neutral sort of colour to it, so it doesn't make my face look super red, super muddy. It's just the perfect bronzer shade for me, and it doesn't come out too harsh or too pigmented. It just blends out perfectly. It's just super buildable, and I'm going to say that about all of these because that is exactly what I want from a bronzer. I just want it to work for my skin tone. Don't want it to pull too red. I want it to be buildable. I want it to not come out like too harsh. I don't want it to be patchy. I just want it to be able to blend out seamlessly, and I feel like that's the case with all of these. This one from Rimmel is a little bit more of a glowy finish. I like matte and I like glowy bronzers. I feel like maybe I prefer matte ones slightly, but to be fair, I like it when it's like matte but it's got like a tiny bit of glow in it. If it was literally just straight up shimmer, I feel like that might put me off a little bit. But this is the Rimmel Lasting Radiance Finishing Powder. It's 001 Ivory, and it's definitely not setting powder for ivory skin. This is more so a bronzer for ivory skin in my opinion. Again, like as you can see, it's got that more sort of caramelly kind of tone when you like swirl all the colours together. And it has got like a little bit of a glow to it as well. And it just works absolutely perfectly, and I really like it. Again, it's not too expensive, so in my opinion this is definitely a bronzer, not a setting powder. These 2 are technically still like drugstore. They're more affordable than the other ones I'm about to mention, but they are a little bit pricier than like an MUA or a Rimmel bronzer. So I've got the Body Shop bronzing powder in 01, which is an amazing shade for pale skin. It's just absolutely perfect. It just works fantastically, and again it's just got the perfect formula. I'm not going to keep saying the same thing because I'm just going to say the same thing about the formula for all of them. So I just love this. It's great. This one from Milani, the Silky Matte Bronzing Powder in the shade 01. Again, perfect tone, perfect formula. This one is an all matte bronzer. The Body Shop one is matte as well. I love it. These 3 are more on the pricey side, but I really like them, so you know, I'm going to mention them. I think, if I'm honest, this one I probably use the most, but the reason why I use it the most is because I just love smelling it every time I open it, because it's just so chocolatey and nice. I think I use it the most literally just so I can smell it, but it's also an amazing bronzer, super great for pale skin. Formula is absolutely perfect. I love it. Fenty Beauty bronzer. This is the Sunstalker and the shade is In the Sun. Again, I think they have about 8 shades, and this is a perfect shade for my pale skin. It works amazingly, and this is a matte one as well. And then last, this is the one I've tried the most recently in my December's first impressions. This is Benefit Hoola Light, which everyone talks about Benefit Hoola and the various different shades they have, and I just needed to get the light one. It was a bad time. I couldn't put it off any longer. It's such a cult, iconic product that everyone talks about, and I love it. The shade is perfect. So there you go. 7 bronzers. These all work amazingly for pale skin, so if that's something you struggle with, there you go. You got something for more price ranges there. When it comes to rejects, for me it's not really about the formula. It's more so just like the colours didn't work out for me. So, just to show that I'm not being biased by including this, I did say that the other MUA bronzer was one of my favourites. However, this one, the MUA Bond Perfection Matte in Sunset Tan, which they've had for a bit longer, I was intrigued to try it, and for me I just found the shade was a little bit too deep for me. I just didn't like it. Just a little bit too red, a little bit too deep. It wasn't for me personally, but obviously I like MUA bronzer formula because I love the other one, but for me, I just didn't like this one. But I could see if maybe you've got like more medium skin tone, it might look a bit better. This Maybelline City bronzer, this is in the shade Medium Warm 250. I think in America they do have a lighter shade than this, so if that ever comes to the UK I would buy it because I've actually got no problem whatsoever with the formula of this. For me, again, it's just the colours too deep for me. Bit too deep, bit too reddish, just too muddy for my skin tone, but I can't really fault the formula. It blends out super well, it's buildable. But for me, it's just a shade, so if they ever bring that lighter shade to the UK, I would buy it and try it because I've got no problem with the formula. It's literally just the shade. So I do quite like the highlighter from this. This is the Revolution Pro Sculpt and Glow Contour and Highlighter Palette. I do quite like the highlighter, but for me, the like bronzer or contour, I don't even know what it is. I feel like it wouldn't be suitable either way for me because it's so red. It's incredibly red. For contour, I'd want something grey, cool toned, and for bronzer, it's just way too red and deep. They've got like 3 different colour versions. This is the lightest one, which is Sands of Time. For me, this just did not work as a contour or a bronzer, but the texture's quite nice, like it's very like velvety, but it does come out a bit too pigmented for my liking. I prefer something a bit more natural. It's got like more of like an eyeshadow pigment to it. Like I don't want my bronzer to have too much pigment. And again, this Revolution Pro 4K bronzer palette, which is in, I think it's in the shade Cool. Yeah, it's in Cool. Again, I don't really look at that and think that the colours look particularly cool. Maybe this one's a bit cool, but then it's got like warm bits in it, so I don't even know. But again, for me, I just felt like the shades looked a bit too muddy, a little bit too deep, and I did find that these could go a little bit patchy when I was blending them sometimes. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But for me, again, I just didn't get along with this. I just don't really know what skin tone they're targeting here. I feel like probably more of a light medium skin tone, but for ultra fair skin, I just didn't find that this worked. I only tried like one blush this year. I'm definitely going to try and buy some more blushes next year because I have found that when I use them I do actually really like how they look. So I definitely need to get some more blushes, that's for sure. But the only one I tried was one from Deuce, which to be fair, I did quite like it actually. It was pretty decent, but I can't be bothered to go get it. I've got 5 highlighters here that I really liked and I'd consider favourites. I have got 3 high-end ones and then 2 drugstore ones. Well, one of them is really cheap and affordable and one of them's a little bit more pricey, but I'm just going to talk about this one first. It used to be a Superdrug because when I bought it, it was on Superdrug and I bought it in like, I think I bought it in like June. Yeah, I think it was June when I bought it, so it wasn't Superdrug, but it's disappeared. But it's from Pop Beauty and they do have like a website where you can buy the products. I'm thinking of doing like a one brand Pop Beauty next year. I'm not going to buy every single thing for a full face, but just the products I'm curious about. This highlighter is absolutely stunning. This is the Prismatic Pop Celestial Light. They've got a few different shades. Honestly, this is stunning. I mean, you can tell I've used it because look at all the weird indentations. It is more of a pinky shade. Look at that. It's just stunning. It's got a gorgeous texture. It's super pigmented and it just looks amazing and ethereal, glowy and just amazing on my skin. It's just fantastic. That one is kind of debatable about whether it's affordable or not. I think it could be like about 12 quid. But this one is definitely affordable. This is from Technic. This is the Get Gorgeous Highlighting Powder. I've got 2 shades. This is Virtuoso. The other one is more of a like lilac-y tone. I think I prefer this one. It's a bit more silvery. This has actually got insane pigmentation. Just look at that. And again, it's got such a nice like velvety, smooth texture. Look at that. And like, yeah, that would work fantastically as an eyeshadow as well, but it's just amazing. And for like 3 quid, it's just so good. And again, it looks ethereal. It just looks like intergalactic. I mean, it's not the most wearable shade for everybody, but they have got loads of different colour versions of these. They have got more wearable shades. This one isn't as expensive as the other two. I think it's about like £15. This is from Doll Beauty. I bought this in November, so it's a recent one for me. It's the Like a Diamond highlighter. I think they've got two different colours, but it's absolutely stunning. It's pigmented, it's beautiful. Again, it's got such a nice texture. This is more of a sort of champagne-y colour, but it works well for pale skin. I feel like this one actually goes on the face a little bit better than the swatches, although, no, that does look pretty nice. Again, it's stunning, it's blinding, it's just everything that I want a highlighter to be. Again, this is quite expensive, but I do really like it. It's the Too Faced Diamond Fire highlighter. Again, it looks sort of like kind of multicoloured, but it comes out sort of like silvery, maybe slightly goldy colour. That's it there. It looks really nice on the face. I wouldn't say like it looks like a weird sort of unnatural colour on the face. I feel like it blends into the skin tone really nicely. It just looks amazing. It's just like all the others. Beautiful, ethereal. I just love it. This one I've literally just tried in my December's first impressions. This is the Becca Shimmering Skin Perfector in Pearl, which again, it's an iconic product and I've heard a lot about it over the years that I've been into makeup, and I just think it's gorgeous. See, this is a super like white icy colour, so it's perfect for pale skin, but again, they have like so many different shades to choose from. Again, it's got this really nice velvety texture and it's just insane. Like, look at that pigmentation. That's just... In terms of highlighters that I didn't really get along with, there were two from Kiko. They were called like Glow Fusion. I did get rid of them. Like, I did a declutter earlier in the year. Kind of wish I'd kept them just so I could have trialed them a little bit more, but in my opinion they didn't have a lot of pigmentation. They just didn't pack a lot of punch, so I didn't really get along with those Kiko ones. This one I still have though. I don't like this. I mean, maybe certain people would like it, but for me, I just did not like the texture. I didn't realise what I was signing up for when I bought this, because it's literally, it's clay. I don't know if you can kind of see this, but they've turned to clay. You rub your hands in it and it's like mushy clay, and it's really weird because when you first get it they're like powdery, and then like the second, third time you use it they sort of turn to this weird clay, and then like there's barely any like pigment that comes off them, so they just don't, in my opinion, look nice, and I just don't like the formula. Once it turns to clay, it's just sort of like all the kind of nice pigmentation goes, so in my opinion, I did not like this Beauty Bay highlighter palette. Okay, so that's all of the base and cheek products discussed. That is what I've loved this year. I'm hoping that I'm going to find more products that I love next year. I'm also going to do a what I want to buy in 2020 video as well after these favourites go up, because there's a lot I've got plans to buy, and hopefully some more new releases will come out and they will go onto that list as well. But all of these products have impressed me a lot this year, and a lot of these I would repurchase, but I feel like a lot of these would like never run out anyway. Like these highlighters, is this highlighter ever going to run out? Probably not. Are any of my bronzers going to run out? Probably not. I mean, I've got 7 there, so if I'm alternating between all of them, I feel like I'd probably never run out of them. That's my base and cheeks favourites from 2019, as well as some ones that I didn't get along with. Next video will be brows, eyes and lips and all of that business. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.